The rope was nearly cut, the last strand stretched thin like veins about to snap. The soldier felt sweat roll down his temple. Though the night was cool, his heart pounded louder than the silence around him, and he could feel the stare of unseen eyes fixed on his every motion. The ranger hung perfectly still, her body coiled like a spring waiting for release. She mouthed again the command to finish the cut, her urgency hidden behind the calm fire in her gaze. The soldier pressed harder, and the rope began to splinter. A sudden rustle in the canopy made him halt. A shadow shifted above, and a faint whisper of air passed his ear like a warning shot. An arrow pulled back, but not released. He glanced at the ranger for guidance, and her eyes told him clearly there was no time left. She wanted him to act fast before hesitation gave the enemy the chance to strike. The soldier clenched his jaw, blade slicing deeper, until the rope fibers shrieked under tension, snapping louder than expected in the heavy forest silence. The ranger dropped hard, twisting in midair, to land on her shoulder, rolling onto her feet. Though the impact left her staggered, she wasted no breath. Her knife was in her hand in one fluid motion, and her eyes never left the canopy. The soldier raised his rifle, aiming into the branches, but he could not see targets clearly. Only faint movement, the brush of leaves, and the glimmer of steel betrayed the hunters waiting. Their silence was more chilling than any battle cry. The horse shifted nervously behind them, its hooves scraping at the earth. It wanted to flee, yet stayed rooted, as if knowing abandonment meant death for them both. The ranger crouched close to the soldier, whispering low so even the night seemed strained to hear. There are more of them than you think. They will not strike until they know we are cornered. Her words carried weight of experience, not fear, and he realized she had been through traps like this before. She tapped her knife against her boot, once a signal to him that they had only moments to decide their move. He wanted to ask where the safe path lay, but the ranger raised a hand, silencing him. Her eyes snapped toward the east, where the trees thinned ever so slightly, as if marking an exit. Yet, before he could speak, the sound came sharp and deliberate, the creak of another bowstring pulled to its limit. The soldier knew they were out of time. The soldier tightened his grip on the rifle and shifted his weight, slowly scanning the branches above. The ranger stayed low, her knife angled like a claw, ready to strike. Though she knew steel against arrows would only delay the inevitable, the forest seemed alive, with its eyes hidden behind every trunk, every branch, waiting for the smallest mistake. The soldier felt the pressure of their watch like a stone on his chest, yet his training forced him to remain still, listening to every whisper of wind, every distant breath that did not belong to him or the ranger. The ranger leaned closer, her voice barely more than a rasp. They let me hang here because they wanted you to come. They know soldiers cannot leave one of their own. She coughed and wiped dirt from her face. The snare was not just a trap, it was bait, and you stepped right into it. Her tone held no blame, only sharp clarity that cut deeper than any accusation. The soldier understood then that their enemies were not reckless, they were patient hunters, and the circle was closing tighter with every heartbeat. A sudden snap echoed through the trees, branches shifting, as if someone leaped between them. The soldier spun, rifle raised, but the target vanished into darkness. A second sound followed from the opposite side, the deliberate distraction of an enemy who knew how to scatter attention. The ranger cursed under her breath, pointing sharply toward the ridge behind them. If we reach the high ground, we may break their line, she hissed, but we must move now. The horse stomped restlessly, sensing the storm about to break, and the soldier knew hesitation meant death. He nodded and lifted the rifle higher, covering the ranger. As she darted toward the ridge, her speed was remarkable, even after hanging helpless moments ago, her body low to the ground, her steps silent as smoke. The soldier followed close behind, the horse snorting and following reluctantly. Branches whipped across their faces, the forest trying to hold them back. Arrows hissed through the air, one striking the earth near the soldier's boot, another shattered against a trunk, spraying splinters into his arm. The ranger did not slow. She pushed forward harder, her breathing sharp but steady. She pointed again to the ridge and the faint path that wound upward through the rocks. The soldier glanced back only once and saw them, shadows moving swiftly in pursuit, climbing through the trees like predators on the hunt. He knew the ridge was their only chance, but he also knew reaching it meant they would have to fight with no retreat. The soldier followed the ranger's gaze to the cave mouth hidden in the shadows of the ridge. It was narrow, but deep enough to offer cover, and at choke point, if they could reach it. He measured the distance quickly, no more than 50 strides, but across terrain wide open with little more than scattered stones for shelter. The hunters knew it too, for their arrows pressed harder, the volleys faster, as though daring the soldier and the ranger to make the attempt. The ranger wiped blood from a shallow cut on her cheek, her eyes never leaving the cave. She leaned close enough that her whisper carried over the roar of arrows. We have one chance. If we wait here, they will climb and surround us. If we run together, some of us may not reach the cave. But if we hesitate, we both die. Her words were sharp, not cruel, only carved from reality. The soldier clenched his jaw, the rifle trembling slightly in his hands. He looked back at the horse pacing in panic, its hooves scraping stone, its breath wild and steaming. The beast could not survive without shelter either. The ranger loosed another arrow, striking a figure that toppled from a branch with a heavy crash. The forest answered with a furious chorus of shouts. The soldiers saw the line shifting, hunters advancing low and fast, preparing to swarm up the ridge. He knew then the ranger's plan was their only chance. He turned to her and gave the faintest nod. She returned it swiftly, her lips curling into the briefest fierce smile, before she slung her bow across her back and readied her knife. The soldier rose, first covering her with the rifle, unleashing a burst that cracked the night sky. The sudden violence gave them a moment of opening, and they seized it, sprinting across the ridge toward the cave. The horse thundered beside them, nostrils flaring as arrows whistled past. One struck the ground at the soldier's heel, nearly tripping him. Another sliced through the ranger's sleeve, drawing blood, but she never faltered. Their boots pounded on the stone, each stride heavier than the last as the shadows of their hunters surged closer. The cave grew nearer, its dark mouth promising either safety or a trap. The ranger threw herself forward, sliding across the final stretch of rock before rolling into cover. The soldier followed, an arrow grazing his shoulder. As he dove behind the stone wall, the horse barreled inside, last barely clearing the entrance. As arrows shattered against the ridge, their hearts thundered, but silence wrapped around them briefly inside the cave, until the echo of approaching footsteps outside reminded them the hunt was far from over. The cave was narrow and cold, its walls damp with centuries of hidden water. The ranger pressed her back against the stone, her chest heaving with every breath. Her knife was slick with blood from the skirmish on the ridge, yet her grip on it did not falter. The soldier crouched beside her, rifle ready, though the echo of his own pulse nearly drowned out the silence between them. The horse paced nervously behind, deeper in the cave, its hooves striking sparks on the stone floor. The soldier glanced at the entrance, where faint torchlight flickered against the rock, shadows shifting as their hunters drew nearer. The ranger motioned for silence and pressed her ear to the stone floor, listening. Her eyes hardened when she rose. They are coming, and not all of them, only a few at first. She tightened the strap on her quiver, though it was nearly empty. The soldier checked the rifle, counting rounds, and found the number grimly low. He knew when the bullets ran dry it would be steel and grit alone against their pursuers. The ranger crouched close to the wall near the mouth of the cave, her posture coiled like a predator, waiting for the strike. The first shadow entered cautiously, a hunter with blade drawn, scanning the dark. The ranger struck before he could blink, her knife flashing across his throat. His body collapsed soundlessly, dragged into the dark by the soldier, who covered the movement with his rifle barrel aimed toward the light. Another followed, then two more, each falling quickly into the trap. The floor grew slick, the smell of blood seeping into the damp air, yet still more came the flicker of torchlight multiplying against the cave walls. The ranger signaled with her hand, sharp and deliberate, hold until they are inside. The soldier understood the risk, but trusted her instinct. He waited until three entered, their silhouettes breaking the faint glow of the torches outside. Then he opened fire, the shots deafening in the enclosed stone tunnel. Bodies crumpled, and the survivors outside shouted in alarm. The cave filled with smoke and dust as echoes rolled endlessly across its walls. The soldier coughed and reloaded his last rounds, the click of metal loud enough to betray their position. The ranger grabbed his arm and pulled him deeper into the cave. There is another way, through eyes saw the air moving. She whispered urgently. Her eyes flicked back to the entrance, where more enemies gathered prepared to flood inside. The soldier hesitated, torn between holding ground and following her, but the sound of more boots pounding toward the cave made the choice for him. They had to move or be buried alive in a tide of steel. The cave passage narrowed as they moved deeper, the walls pressing close, and the ground slick beneath their boots. The ranger led with swift steps, her hand brushing the stone, as if she knew the way by instinct. The soldier followed close, rifle raised, though the echoes of pursuit behind them made it clear their hunters were not far. The horse snorted nervously, its hooves slipping, but the ranger tugged firmly at its reins, forcing it forward. The air grew colder and faint. Drafts whispered from unseen cracks, promising that somewhere ahead an exit existed. The ranger paused, suddenly raising her hand for silence. She crouched low, pressing her ear once more against the stone floor. Her eyes narrowed as she rose quickly, whispering, "They are splitting their forces. Some are circling outside to cut us off, while others follow us through here. We have only moments to decide." The soldier glanced behind into the blackness, where the faint glimmer of torchlight flickered. The sound of boots striking stone echoed closer, every heartbeat louder than the dripping water overhead. The ranger stepped into a wider chamber where stalactites hung like daggers from the ceiling. She pointed toward a tunnel on the left, narrower, but rising sharply. The air smelled fresher there. "It leads to the ridge again," she said. "But if they know this cave, they will be waiting." The soldier frowned, his fingers tightening on the rifle. "If we stay here, we are cornered. If we move, we walk into another trap." The ranger met his eyes, unflinching, and said, "Then we do not walk into it, we break it." Before he could question her, she pulled from her pack a small pouch tied with cord. Inside was a mix of powder and oil scavenged from her earlier mission. She scattered it quickly across the chamber floor, her hands moving with practiced speed. The soldier realized her intent instantly. She would turn the chamber into a fire trap to slow their pursuers. She struck flint against steel, sending sparks into the powder, but held back the flame until the sound of boots grew nearly upon them. Her eyes burned fiercely in the dim light, a silent warning that once it ignited there would be no turning back. The soldier helped guide the horse toward the narrow tunnel, pulling it with every ounce of strength. The ranger crouched low, holding her blade in one hand and the flint in the other. She waited, listening to the growing chaos behind them. The first shadows appeared, torches raised, blades gleaming. She struck the spark into the powder, and the chamber erupted with fire and smoke. The blast roared through the stone, forcing the soldier to shield his face as the ranger yelled, "Run before the flames consume us." The tunnel shook with the roar of the flames behind them, smoke chasing in choking waves. The ranger pressed forward, pulling the horse by its reins, while the soldier covered their retreat, his rifle raised, though his eyes stung from the heat. The sound of enemies screaming in the fire echoed endlessly through the cave, until it became impossible to know how many still survived. The soldier knew the fire would not hold them all back. Some would push through, even at the cost of their own lives. There, hunters were too disciplined to abandon the chase. The tunnel grew steeper, the walls narrowing until the horse could barely fit. The ranger urged it on, with sharp words, her breath ragged, but her movements unwavering. She had said there was an exit, and the faint brush of cool air on their faces gave hope that she had been right. The soldier followed close behind, his boots slipping on loose stones. He glanced back once through the smoke-filled dark and caught the glimmer of torchlight still advancing. They had lost some, but not all, and soon the enemy would be at their heels again. The passage twisted until it opened suddenly into a split. The ranger paused, raising her hand for silence. She studied both paths, her instincts sharp despite exhaustion. One path sloped upward, carrying fresher air, the other dipped downward into black silence. The soldier whispered quickly which way. She turned to him, her jaw set. "If we take the higher path, we reach the ridge, but they will expect it. If we take the lower path, we may find an underground river. I cannot promise where it leads, but it may throw them off." Her voice dropped. "If we choose wrong, we die." The soldier listened to the footsteps drawing closer, his decision forced by the ticking of unseen time. He nodded toward the lower path, trusting her judgment. The ranger gave a quick nod back and led the way. The darkness deepened so heavy They could see only the faint glimmer of wet stone. The horse hesitated, snorting, as though sensing the danger ahead, but the ranger pressed its flank, guiding it into the black. They moved slowly, the sound of water faint at first, then louder, until the roar of a river filled the passage. The tunnel opened to a cavern vast and echoing with rushing current. A wide river tore through its hard black water, churning against jagged rocks. The ranger crouched at the edge, testing the flow with her hand. Her face hardened. This is the way we can let the current carry us out, if we hold together. The soldier stared at the torrent, knowing it was as likely to kill them as to free them. He turned at the echo of boots behind torches now visible there. Hunters were at the cavern mouth. He looked at the ranger and saw no fear, only resolve, as she whispered, "Jump now, before they block the way." The soldier hesitated only a breath before gripping the reins of the horse tighter. The ranger leapt first, her body slicing into the raging current. With barely a splash, the soldier dragged the terrified beast forward, and then hurled himself in after her. The water was ice cold, seizing his lungs and twisting his body in its furious pull. The roar of the river drowned out everything, even the shouts of their pursuers fading quickly into the distance. The current spun him wildly, but he caught a glimpse of the ranger ahead, her hand gripping the horse's mane as the animal kicked and thrashed against the torrent. The darkness swallowed them as the river forced them through narrow stone throats, scraping their shoulders against jagged walls. The soldier fought to keep his head above the foam, but the current dragged him under more than once. Each time he surfaced gasping, he saw the ranger still holding on, eyes wide but steady, as if the fury of the river itself would not break her. The horse bellowed a desperate sound, its strength keeping them from sinking entirely, yet the soldier knew the beast could not endure forever. Suddenly the current surged faster, and they were hurled into a chute of stone, dropping into a vast pool below. The impact stole the air from his chest, and for a moment he sank into black silence. His body screamed for breath, but then he broke the surface, sucking in sweet air. The ranger was there beside him, dragging herself to a rocky ledge, pulling the horse with stubborn determination. The soldier swam hard to join them, every muscle burning, until at last he collapsed beside her, shivering and soaked. The cavern around them glowed faintly, with moonlight spilling through a crack high above. The ranger tilted her head, listening, her wet hair plastered to her face. She whispered, "They will not follow, not through that current." Her words carried exhaustion, but also the iron certainty of a survivor. The soldier lay back on the stone, staring up at the thin ribbon of sky overhead. He knew they had escaped for now, but the mission she had spoken of still weighed heavy in the silence. The ranger rose unsteadily, pressing her palm against the horse's flank, reassuring the trembling animal. She turned to the soldier, her expression fierce despite the bruises and cuts that marked her skin. "We are not finished," she said quietly. "The supply lines are still hidden in these forests, and we have a chance now, while they believe we are dead." The soldier met her gaze and saw the fire unbroken in her eyes. He pushed himself to his feet, though his body begged to rest. Outside the cavern, the night was giving way to dawn. The faint light touched the edges of the forest, painting the mist in pale silver. The ranger adjusted her gear and tightened her grip on the knife. Her voice was calm, but sharp as steel. "They think the hunt is over, but now we hunt them." And her words hung in the cool air like a promise that the real battle had only begun. The ranger moved first, slipping through the crack that opened from the cavern into the misty forest beyond. The soldier followed, hauling the horse with steady hands until they emerged into the pale light of dawn. The air was damp with dew, and the ground soft beneath their boots. Birds stirred above, unaware of the silent war being fought beneath their branches. The ranger crouched low, scanning the tree line with sharp eyes, every sense alive after the night of fire and blood. She pointed toward the east, where the forest thickened and shadows still clung to the earth like a shroud. The soldier tightened the strap of his rifle across his chest. His body ached from the river and from the climb, but his mind remained sharp. The ranger had spoken of hidden supply routes, and he now believed her more than ever. Their enemies had been willing to sacrifice men just to silence her. If she carried knowledge that could break them, then every moment counted. He motioned for her to lead the way, and she moved with silent precision, her footsteps making no more sound than a breath. The horse followed reluctantly, ears twitching at every distant crack in the woods. The soldier glanced back, often expecting shadows to emerge from the trees, but nothing stirred save the wind. The ranger slowed and crouched again near a cluster of moss-covered stones. Her fingers brushed the ground, finding faint impressions of boots, too many to belong to hunters alone. She whispered, "Supply carriers, heavy loads, moving in lines. They pass here often." She looked up at him, her voice low but fierce. "We are close to their heart." They pressed on through twisting paths until the faint smell of smoke reached them. It was not the sharp tang of fire, but the lingering scent of campfires and cooking that clung to the air. The ranger gestured for silence and inclined to rise. Her body pressed low against the earth. The soldier crawled beside her until his eyes reached the edge of the ridge below them. Stretched a hidden valley shrouded by trees, where dozens of tents stood in tight clusters. Wagons lined with crates were guarded by armed men, and fires burned steadily, as if this place had never known fear of discovery. The soldier exhaled slowly, the scale of it larger than he had imagined. The ranger's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes burning with determination. She whispered, "This is their supply base. Destroy this, and their advance." Falter as she turned to him, her expression calm but unwavering. "This is why they hunted me. They knew if I reached this place, their secret would burn." The soldier felt the weight of her words, and the weight of the battle that was now upon them. He checked his rifle, then looked back at the camp below, knowing their next move would decide not only their fate, but the fate of all who fought beyond this forest. The rope was nearly cut, the last strand stretched thin like veins about to snap. The soldier felt sweat roll down his temple. Though the night was cool, his heart pounded louder than the silence around him, and he could feel the stare of unseen eyes fixed on his every motion. The ranger hung perfectly still, her body coiled like a spring waiting for release. She mouthed again the command to finish the cut, her urgency hidden behind the calm fire in her gaze. The soldier pressed harder, and the rope began to splinter. A sudden rustle in the canopy made him halt. A shadow shifted above, and a faint whisper of air passed his ear like a warning shot. An arrow pulled back, but not released. He glanced at the ranger for guidance, and her eyes told him clearly there was no time left. She wanted him to act fast before hesitation gave the enemy the chance to strike. The soldier clenched his jaw, blades slicing deeper until the rope fiber shrieked under tension, snapping louder than expected in the heavy forest silence. The ranger dropped hard, twisting in midair to land on her shoulder, rolling onto her feet. Though the impact left her staggered, she wasted no breath. Her knife was in her hand in one fluid motion, and her eyes never left the canopy. The soldier raised his rifle, aiming into the branches, but he could not see targets clearly. Only faint movement, the brush of leaves, and the glimmer of steel betrayed the hunters waiting. Their silence was more chilling than any battle cry. The horse shifted nervously behind them, its hooves scraping at the earth. It wanted to flee, yet stayed rooted, as if knowing abandonment meant death for them both. The ranger crouched close to the soldier, whispering low so even the night seemed strained to hear, "There are more of them than you think. They will not strike until they know we are cornered." Her words carried weight of experience, not fear, and he realized she had been through traps like this before. She tapped her knife against her boot, once a signal to him that they had only moments to decide their move. He wanted to ask where the safe path lay, but the ranger raised a hand, silencing him. Her eyes snapped toward the east, where the trees thinned ever so slightly, as if marking an exit. Yet, before he could speak, the sound came sharp and deliberate, the creak of another bowstring pulled to its limit. The soldier knew they were out of time.